Cat is not only Christopher's last name, but Christopher is a cat, a real cat, colored white and orangey. Christopher belongs to me, and maybe I belong to Christopher. Now, you, whoever you are, as you read what I'm going to say about Christopher and me, will probably not want to believe what I am going to tell you. And there isn't any way in which I can make you believe me. I can only state the facts as they are, and hope that you will believe me. Well, here goes. Christopher and I understand one another. I mean, we have known one another so long that each of us truly knows what the other is talking about. We have invented a kind of man-cat language that each of us knows, and we're pretty proud of it. Not everybody who has a cat can do that. Neither can every cat who has a master. Christopher isn't the only animal I like, although I probably like him more than any other animal I'm acquainted with at the present time. The fact is that I like animals in general. I like to look at them. They always astonish me. I am never sure of what they are going to do, and I am constantly being surprised. Now, if you're that kind of person, as I am, a good place to go, as often as you like, is the zoo. That's where I go any number of times. As I said before, for a long time I didn't tell Christopher about my trips to the zoo, but one day I had had just too fine a time to keep it all to myself. The monkeys had never been funnier. The lions had roared like mad. In the birdhouse there was such singing as I had never heard before. In fact, all the animals at whose cages I had stopped had behaved just as if they were doing a circus act for me alone. I had to tell someone, and I decided to tell Christopher. I don't want to talk about dinner, Christopher. I have something really exciting to talk about. This afternoon, where do you think I went? Oh, said Christopher, his yellow eyes widening in astonishment. Didn't you go to work? Yes, of course I did. But I mean later. I went somewhere else. Where do you think? Come on, guess. I give up, purred Christopher contentedly, without making even the slightest attempt to guess. Tell me, where did you go? To the zoo, I answered, very importantly, looking him straight in the eye to see how he would take it, for I was sure he would be beside himself with excitement. You can imagine my disappointment when all he said was, "Oh, that place?" And then he said, "But about your trip to the zoo this afternoon, what did you do there and what did you see?" "Aha! I thought you'd be interested," I teased him. "Well, first I went to the monkey house. And what antics they put on for me. I don't know when I have laughed so much. Then I wandered over to the lion's house and watched those majestic animals. There was one in particular, Christopher, who reminded me very much of you, except he was very much bigger." Probably a cousin of mine," Christopher replied lightly. "You know, we cats and lions are distantly related. But it seems to me that you didn't see anything or anyone very exciting. Wasn't there anything new?" "Such as what, Christopher?" He had been lying on his back all this time, gently nibbling at one of my fingers while talking. Now he gave my finger a final lick with his rough little tongue, and then he sat up, quite erect, and faced me. His eyes had a sly, laughing look in them, as if he were enjoying a huge joke, and something made me feel that I was that joke. "Did you, by any chance," he asked, "see a squirrelilogy?" "Did I see a squirrely what?" I sputtered. Christopher placed his head between his two front paws and shook with merriment. "Oh, I knew you wouldn't be able to say it," he laughed. "But did you see a squirrelilogy?" "No, Christopher," I replied as calmly as I could. "No, I didn't see a squirrelilogy." "You bet you didn't, and you bet you never will," said Christopher, and he began to laugh again, so heartily he almost rolled from our chair. After he had caught his breath again, he wanted to know, "Did you see a 12-eyed wake-up world?" "No, Christopher," I replied. "I didn't see a 12-eyed wake-up world." "You bet you didn't. And you bet you never will." He went on just as before. "What about a treasure tip? Did you see one of those?" "No, Christopher," I said. "I didn't see a treasure tip." "You bet you didn't see one," he echoed. "Now how about a lapper-lake? Did you see one of those?" "No, Christopher," I said quietly. I not only didn't see a lapper-lake, but I never in all my life heard of one before. "You bet you didn't," he continued, teasing me. "And I bet you didn't see a one-sided, lopsided lizard, or a snake that walked upon his tail, or a sleeper mite more, or a double-headed hoodunkus, or a ha-ha-ha." "Oh," I interrupted, certain that I was going to get the better of him at last. "If you mean a laughing hyena, then you are wrong, for I did see one of those." "But I don't mean a laughing hyena," said Christopher, slowly and evenly, as if talking to a very stupid person. "A hyena is one thing, and a ha-ha-ha is another thing. And I meant a ha-ha-ha. When I say a ha-ha-ha, I don't mean a hyena. And when I say a hyena, I don't mean a ha-ha-ha, or vice versa. Now, did you see a ha-ha-ha?" I answered weakly, "No, Christopher, I did not see a ha-ha-ha." "You bet you didn't, and you bet you never will," he said with an air of closing the subject, "because there aren't any more. No more merry ha-ha-has. No more contrary double-headed hooduncuses. No more lazy sleeper-mite-mores. No more proud snake that walked upon his tail. No more one-sided, lopsided lizards. No more thirsty lapper-lakes. No more beautiful wake-up worlds with eyes like rainbows. And no more sad little squillilogies." Here Christopher sighed deeply and curled himself up into a ball as if to sleep. Now, if he thought I was going to permit him to fall asleep after he made me as curious as I am now, he was greatly mistaken. I shook him wide awake at once. "Oh, no, you don't," I exclaimed. "You can't go to sleep now. You've got to explain all these funny animals you've been asking me about. What are they, and why won't I ever have a chance to see them? And why won't there ever be any more of them? I'm still young, and the world is full of zoos. I can go from zoo to zoo until I find all these animals, or, if I'm obliged to do so, I can even go into jungles and look for them." I don't really believe I meant that last statement, for I don't believe I would likely go into jungles to hunt for anything, let alone a lot of animals I'd never heard of. I don't think I'd like that at all, but since I had said it, I couldn't take it back, so I just put on my bravest look. "You poor, poor fellow," said Christopher sadly. "Neither money nor courage, nor anything men possess, can get you a look at those animals. They all died thousands of years ago. There have never been any more, and there never will be. They all drowned." "But how, Christopher? How? Please tell me how." Christopher reached over and patted me with a little paw so soft you couldn't believe that sharp claws were hidden beneath. Now, he said. "Don't excite yourself. I'll tell you all about it." And then every night, for many nights, Christopher told me about those animals we shall never see again. The animals of the lost zoo, who didn't get into Noah's Ark, even though he sent them all invitations. The story came to Christopher from his father, who had it from his father, who had it from his father, and on, back to the very first of all the Christopher cats, the one who was in Noah's Ark. When I had heard the whole story, I told Christopher that I thought the boys and girls of the world ought to know about it, and he agreed with me and gave me his permission to write the story in my own way. That's what he said, that I could write it in my own way. But I suppose he seldom means what he says, for all the time I was writing, he was forever bringing me ideas of his own, which he said ought to go in. Sometimes I thought they were good, but most of the times I didn't. The Wake-Up World. This was the song of the Wake-Up World. the beautiful beast with the long tail curled. Wake up, O world! O world, awake! The light is bright on hill and lake. O world, awake! Wake up, O world! The flags of the wind are all unfurled. Wake up, O world, awake! Of earth's delightfulness partake. Wake up, O world, whatever hour. Sweet are the fields, sweet is the flower. Wake up, O world, awake! Perhaps to see the daylight break. Perhaps to see the sun descend, the night begin, the daylight end. But something surely to behold, not bought with silver or with gold, not shown in any land of dreams, for open eyes the world teems, the whole world teems, with lovely things to do or make. Wake up, O world, awake! Such was the song of the wake-up world, the beautiful beast with the long tail curled, the wake-up world, so swift and fleet, with 12 bright eyes and 6 strong feet. Such was the song he sang all day, lest men or beasts should sleep away, the gift of time and never know the beauties of this life below. 12 were his eyes, as I have said, placed clockwise in his massive head, never in any time or weather were all those eyes shut tight together, but daily at its certain hour each eye became possessed of power. At one an eye all pale and white flew open for day's first light, and looked alone until at 2 there woke his wandering eye of blue. His eye of green at stroke of 3 blazed like a jewel brilliantly. At 4 he opened up the red, and all around its luster spread. Shyly then, as if all sleepy yet, at 5 peeped forth the violet, an eye of silver, chill and cold. The hour of 6 would then unfold. At 7, with a sudden wink, he would let loose his eye of pink. At 8, an eye so mild and mellow would gaze about, this one was yellow. Prompt at the stroke of 9, they say, would twinkle forth his eye of gray. At 10, as merry as a clown, you could behold the laughing brown. 11 strikes, and open flies, an eye as black as midnight skies. And when the hour of 12 was told, the time was one more half-day old. He opened full his eye of gold. His 12 bright eyes he flashed around, till rainbows flecked the trees and ground. Oh, loveliest beast in song or story, the wake-up world in all his glory. He could not sleep as others could, but for a moment in the wood might stand and rest himself a mite, then quickly would be off in flight, crossing mountain, field, and lake, bidding the drowsy world awake. Every hour some sleepy head would hear his song and leap from bed, to open his eyes on some delight of lovely day or beauteous night. What would you give to see alive a wake-up world at 5:30? Could anything excite you more than seeing him at exactly 4? His eyes of white, blue, green, and red, leaping like car lights from his head, or watch each eye from hour to hour, beginning at exactly 1, unfold its beauty like a flower, till all those eyes were on the sun. 'Twould take you half a day at least to get the most of such a feast. But never shall his like appear, again we shall never hear. His song in lovely measures hurled at sleepyheads throughout the world. Excitement robbed him of his breath, excitement led him to his death. Flood mornings when he could have been, being awake, the first one in. Excitement made him play the dunce, and open all his eyes at once. He rushed right on through dawn and dark, pointing latecomers to the ark. Too great the strain was for his heart. Slowly he sank, his great knees shook, while those his song had helped to start passed on without a backward look. The waters fell upon him there, his 12 bright eyes shining like one. They covered him, and none knew where to find him when the storm was done. All right. The Squirrelilogy. He was the gentlest creature made. Alone he lived, and alone he played. Ever so quietly, he would have made the nicest pet. But now there's no place one may get a Squirrelilogy. Never an animal half so shy, with such a sad and lonesome eye. The world will never see, with spotted fur or brown and yellow. He was a most attractive fellow, the Squirrelilogy. He would have eaten from your hand, fetched sticks and stones at your command. Quite agreeably, he would have run close by your side, happy at heart, though lonesome eyed, the Squirrelilogy. He had a little tufted tail, and held it high just like a sail. When things went merrily, waved it in such a gladsome manner, it seemed a brown and yellow banner, did Squirrelilogy. But if perchance his pride was hurt, that merry flag drooped in the dirt, quite distressfully, and tears as large as wet as those you ever shed rolled down the nose of Squirrelilogy. If only when the moment came for naming him some other name, he had been happily, he never would have missed the ark. We might have in every park a Squirrelilogy. But he was fated from the start to have a most unhappy heart, broken easily. He never had an answer pert for those when his pride was hurt. Shy Squirrelilogy. And all his saddest moments came because he had so strange a name. But what could better be for any tongue or mouth to say, in tones ridiculous and gay, than Squirrelilogy? Now, just suppose that you, instead of the names you answer to, so importantly, shudder to hear your name at all, because it boomed like a waterfall, like Squirrelilogy. Now, tiger is a pleasant name, and bear and elephant the same, and oh, that we all agree, armadillo, likewise giraffe, but every one of us must laugh at Squirrelilogy, and thus his name became a joke whenever it was heard or spoke in any company, till he grew shyer by the hour, his nature just a trifle sour. Poor Squirrelilogy! Whenever mischief had been done, under the moon or under the sun, the forest instantly, because they loved to say his name, would shout in laughing tones, "Oh, shame on Squirrelilogy!" Was something missing? Where did it go? Who was the thief? Did anyone know? How gleefully came answer from 1,000 throats, in gurgles, chuckles, and merry notes, "'Twas Squirrelilogy!" Not that they thought he did such things, but just for the pleasure of teasing brings. No, not spitefully, but just to see him blush with shame, they thundered forth that funny name, Squirrelilogy! Such was the state of keen distress, in which he lived in loneliness, a little bitterly, when into his possession came a letter signed with Noah's name, to Squirrelilogy. He gazed at Noah's invitation, relief, he said, from my sad station. In this note I see, let others of the rain despair. It is an answer to the prayer of Squirrelilogy. Therefore he climbed his favorite tree, the day the flood was set to be, and waited patiently. He gulped a sob in his little throat, as others rushed to Noah's boat. Poor Squirrelilogy! Let us not look as the waters rise to cover his feet and mouth and eyes so steadily, and let our laughter be refined whenever his image comes to mind. Poor little Squirrelilogy. The treasurer. All thing lost could now be found, though buried fathoms underground. If only one treasurer had been dragged to the ark and hustled in, all pirate gold and silver rings, pieces of 8 and 2 penny bits, We could discover and live like kings if we could find some treasure tips. Why, we could dress like Indian princes, wear silver buckles on our breeches, and dine on chocolates and quinces. There'd be no beggars down in ditches, nor any man without his coat, if a treasure tit had reached the boat. In truth, he was a funny thing, quite small and slender like a stick, but faster than a bird on wing. Whoever caught him had to be quick, for once in hand you gripped his tail and swung him gently fro and to. He was never known to fail, whoever this magic ditty knew. Treasure tit, bright in heat or frost, find the precious thing I've lost, follow it high, follow it low, point me to places treasures go, down in the ground, up in tree, all around, carry me, lead me through bush into cave and den, follow the thing I've lost and when. Its hiding place you surely know. Shine, treasure tit, oh, shine and glow. And sure as snuff will make you sneeze, and elephants weigh more than fleas, the wee small beastie in your hand would turn and point at this command, and tug and pull and strain and strive, with every nerve and sense alive. And many a mile perhaps you'd go, this way and that and to and fro, across a river and up a mountain, down the valley and through a fountain, and bruised you'd be and tied and tossed, but nearer and nearer the thing you lost, till treasure tit would suddenly glow like a rod of fire, and then you'd know that overhead or underground, whatever you lost was surely found. Oh why didn't one embark? Why didn't one, just one, reach the ark? But then your dog could find his bone, Christopher Cat his rubber ball. Mother could find the precious stone that slipped through a hole in the garden wall. And not a single girl or boy would ever weep for a mislaid top, but human traits we sometimes find to large degree in animal kind, and things of greatest worth and use are often subject to abuse. And such, I'm sorry to relate, accounts for treasure tit's sad fate. He had no quiet, he had no peace, his life was one continual quest. If tired at length he sought release, in sleep they yanked him from his nest. The silly things they made him seek could not be told you in a week. The forest babies, just for spite, would wander off into the night, and bury deep in bog or pit, just to make work for treasure tit. Nothing was nailed or held securely, let it be lost. All knew that surely nothing could harm or happen it would be found by treasure tit. How he hated that magic ditty, down in the ground, up in tree, all around, carry me. How he longed for peace and pity, and how those two for ark's trip chosen, with horror at the thought were frozen. Oh, what a dismal, dreary fate theirs was they shook to contemplate. Thousands of animals would be there, and they of their kind the only pair. Millions of things would go astray. Who would find them? They, only they. They'd have no time to dance or sing or play or rest or anything. They looked ahead, and 40 days they looked ahead, and 40 nights of work and weariness met their gaze. A future stripped of all delights, though every passenger might pretend he was their one and only friend. Behind this friendliness would lurk only the wish to make them work. The prospect pleased them not a whit. That's why we have no treasure tit. The Hoodinkus with the double head, or just Hoodinkus. How often have you heard it said that if you had an extra head, you might be twice as wise? How often have you placed your skull against a friend and tried to pull an answer from the skies? One hand is not as good as two, one foot would never do, one eye, how sad a fate. But when Hoodinkus history You hear, I'm sure you will agree, one head is adequate. How shall we best describe this creature? Two heads were his most striking feature. One of each end was seen, and like a long accordion, his striped body rippled on, in little pleats between. At first each head tried hard to smother the envy it felt of the other, and both were so polite, but all who saw them only waited until this courtesy abated. There had to be a fight. Too soon the disagreement came, it centered on their choice of name. By what name shall we link us? Who think us with the double head? Cried one. Too long, the other said. Why not just who think us? And then whoever near them came must call each head its special name, which was a bit of bother. You couldn't greet them in a hurry. You greeted one and then had to scurry around to greet the other. Whatever way the animal went, one head alone could be content. The other head must nurse its disappointment and its wrath, the while it churned a dusty path, traveling in reverse. Thus more and more disputes arose, as stubbornly each rival chose its way and would not yield. For days and days they might not stir, each vowing never to defer, out of some glade or field, till in the end the weight of slumber one head would finally encumber, and so steadily the wide awake would turn and peep, then drag the other sound asleep away in victory. But as their body older grew, their heads their wisdom adding to, had learned to quarrel less, and had for many years contrived, until a certain note arrived, to live in peacefulness. They eyed the letter for a while, each with a most respectful smile, upon the other waited, and would be waiting still I fear, but luckily they chanced to hear the news the letter stated. How nice the first head beamed, a trip, just think of it, and on a ship. And then, as if to slaughter his former friend, the other turned, his voice with horror blared and burned. You know I hate the water. We'll go, the first head spoke, that's that, with contradiction full and flat. The other said, not me. I take my firm and final stand where I was born, here on the land. I'll never go to sea. For days on end the quarrel raged. They were so busily engaged in their disputing, they never felt the first drop fall. They heeded not the ox last call, nor heard its whistle tooting.